do I find this in Windows 11?
Yeah.
We ready?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. We're gonna call the meeting to order. So this is the February 26th meeting of the Board of Adjustment. We want to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We'll start, I think if you guys all have the agenda tonight, we'll basically start with roll call. Start CJ.
Sounds good. Valerie Lundy,
Present.
Louis Ramon,
Present.
Jim Rumsey,
Present.
and Chairman Nick Abercrombie.
Present. Great, we're all here. So we're gonna start tonight with our minutes and we'll move on to, we have one item on the agenda tonight, which is variance 23 or 2023-10. So we'll go through the minutes to begin with. I think you guys all have the minutes in your packets. Any thoughts, discussions, comments, inputs, or issues with the minutes from our previous meeting?
No, I have no problem with the January 25th meeting.
I didn't see anything.
Okay, all set. The one comment I had, CJ, and I apologize for not sending this to you earlier. I hate to point out typos in public. If you go to the last, second to last line, it says there were no comments, approval of the minutes, either in person. May just want to cross out that second.
Is that on page one?
That is on page 1, item number 2. Just below.
Oh,
the-
gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, perfect. Yeah, we'll make that.
Just stuck out to me, so.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, I figured you might. So giving no other input on the minutes, it was a pretty straightforward meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I move to approve the minutes as editorially amended.
Editorially amended, very good. Do we have a second?
Second. Valerie Lundy,
Sure.
Louis Ramon,
Approved.
I'm sorry, my head wasn't there.
Jim Rumsey,
Approved.
Nick Abercrombie.
Approved. I will sign these. Okay. Right. We do have one item on the agenda tonight. That is variance 2023-10, the Nash Front Yard Accessory Building. This is a request by Hayes Nash, applicant and landowner, to locate a 24-foot by 42-foot accessory building in a front yard on lot 3 of Aspen Acres. That's 115 Troll Road, Woodland Park, in the suburban residential zone district. So in order to approve variance requests, we've got to have a quorum of 4 members present, so we have that. And we also have to have 4 yes votes. So if we had 5, we could go 4 out of 5. Today it's 4, so just understand we need to essentially unanimous decision, 4 out of 4 here. If for any reason the applicant wishes to withdraw their application, you may do so really at any time. You can also request that the hearing be tabled. So for some reason, something comes up, it's going in the wrong direction, you can also request that to be tabled. You can do that at any time prior to decision by the board as well. For public comment, I'm not sure that we have large public comment this evening. I don't think we received any public comment, CJ. Yeah. Correct. But if we do have public comment, just for the record, we do ask that the public comment reserve themselves to 5 minutes per person. And we have asked the staff and then the applicant to keep it to basically 20 minutes as we go on the presentation. So if anybody would like to provide public comment, there might be a sign-up sheet. I think there is a sign-up sheet.
Not in the room tonight, just.
Okay, it's not a big room.
Yeah.
That's fair. Just trying to be consistent.
Yeah.
So no big deal. But anybody would like to obviously come up at the appropriate time, we'll let you know that. Or if anybody joins online, you may raise a hand or indicate that you've got comments, and we'll go from there. I'll now read the case into the record. So once again, this is 2023-10. Read the first part. The subject property is 2.5 acres in size. It is zoned suburban residential, and it's located at the northeast corner of the Colorado State Highway 24 and Troll Road, as seen on the vicinity map in Figure 1 that we'll see in the staff presentation. Per the zoning map in Figure 2, the subject property is bordered by residentially zoned land on all sides. To the northeast is land that is residing in unincorporated Teller County, zoned R1. Across Troll Road to the southeast is land that is zoned suburban residential. And to the south, land zoned multifamily residential suburban. That is within the city limits of Woodland Park. To the west of the property is another single-family residential parcel zoned SR, suburban residential. It is also within the Aspen Acres subdivision. And lastly, behind the parcel to the northwest is more land that's within unincorporated Teller County, which is zoned Z mixed zoning, and where the peak view, not sure what the bottom of that is, but anyway, it's zoned Z mixed. I'm sure we have the rest in the staff report. So just want to sort of query the board here. Does anyone have any involvement in the case that would make it difficult, hard for them to render a fair assessment from the board?
No,
No,
Okay, hearing none. So we'll look at the variance approval checklist. So for each variance, if we were going to approve the variance, the board shall consider the application and grant or deny it according to the provisions in chapter 1860. In granting a variance, the board may prescribe appropriate conditions in conformity with Title 18. So the applicant shall demonstrate existence of a hardship is the first thing, right? We can't do this just because. The hardship would be exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of the property, exceptional topography of the property, so the slope, or any other extraordinary exceptional situation or condition peculiar to the property. Makes it kind of a unique spot. The next piece is the applicant shall submit a written application with a site plan for a variance demonstrating that all of the following exist. So that there exist hardships, as we talked about previously, which are peculiar to the land, structure, or building and are not applicable to other lands or structures in the same zone or district. The hardships did not result from actions of the present or past owner or applicant. That the literal interpretation of Title 18 would deprive the applicant property owner of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zone or district. And if granted, the applicant property owner will not confer special privileges will not confer special privileges denied to other lands or structures in the same zone or district. And then as a board, we shall make the following findings: that the representations in the application are valid, that the variance is justified and will make possible the reasonable use of the land or structure, and that the variance will be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the comprehensive plan and Title 18, and will not be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. Okay. We're ready to begin. CJ, if you're ready, we'll begin with the staff presentation.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair. So my first couple slides may be a little bit redundant here, but that's okay. So you guys are hearing tonight is a request by the property owner Hayes Nash to locate a 24 by 42 accessory building in the front yard. As the chair just mentioned, the subject property is 2.5 acres in zone suburban residential. On the right-hand side is the zoning map that the chair was referencing. And as you guys can see, the white parcels there are actually unincorporated Teller County. So that's what that zone Z is. I believe it's multi-use, and Teller County R1 is just residential. The subject property owner is asking the Board of Adjustment to approve a variance to construct a 24 by 42 accessory building in a front yard. Section 18 of the municipal code provides a definition of accessory use, which includes standards for size and placement of accessory buildings. The definition states that accessory use means a use or structure naturally and normally incidental to, subordinate to, and devoted exclusively to the main use of the land or buildings. Accessory buildings shall not be larger than the main or principal building. Otherwise, they shall be considered a main or principal building. Accessory buildings shall be constructed only if construction of the principal building has commenced. And this last portion is the kicker for you guys here tonight. No accessory building shall be placed in a front yard. The accessory use in this instance is a proposed detached garage. Within the SR zone district, a detached garage is considered an accessory use, which is allowed within the SR zone district per the table of permitted uses within city code. The detached structure is being proposed to be constructed on the eastern side of the property and in close proximity to the single-family home. According to the city code, a front yard is defined as a yard extending across the front of the lot between the side lot lines and measured between the front lot line and the main building or any projection thereto, other than the projection of steps, terraced, unenclosed porches, or entryways. The current slide is the proposed site plan. Due to the size of the property, there appears to be ample space on all four sides of the existing structure for a potential building site. Not seen on the site plan is the existing topography. Later on in the presentation are site photos that show that there are significant grade changes, specifically along the northern and western portion of the property. The red box here on this slide outlines the front yard, which is the area that spans the width of the lot between the front of the house and the front property line. Per city code definition that I mentioned previously, accessory structures cannot be located within this area. Within the front yard, there are also water and sewer lines that run to the house, which is outlined in green, that further limit the building area. Lastly, on the site plan, the proposed location of the garage is outlined in blue. The applicant is proposing to place the structure on the eastern side of the site in the existing home. As the layout is configured, approximately half of the proposed structure would encroach into the quote-unquote front yard. This slide is a snapshot from the Google Street View taken from Troll Road, looking northwest onto the property. As seen here, the property is covered with a mixture of mature pines and aspens that would shield the proposed structure from the street. The current slide are photos taken from the existing driveway, looking northwest at the existing home and to the north side of the home. The property as a whole has an existing significant terrain sloping from the northwest to the southeast, running down towards Troll Road. These photos here are taken again from the existing driveway looking northeast at the proposed garage site. The applicant currently has temporary shelters placed where the proposed garage would be located. As you can see here, the hillside on the portion of the property where it would be allowable to place an accessory structure is quite steep. This slide here is a rendering of the proposed structure submitted within the application packet. As you will see within the staff recommendation, during the final zoning development portion of the construction process, the applicant must adhere to the City of Woodland Park architectural design guidelines. Section 18.60.020 requires the application to demonstrate how the variance meets the standards here on the screen. That special conditions exist on the property. Staff found that special conditions and circumstances do in fact exist on the property due to the significant topography of the property, specifically within the northern and western portion of the property. Per city code, an accessory structure cannot be placed within the front yard of the property. The applicant is proposing that only a portion of the accessory structure would encroach into the front yard line. The special conditions did not result from the actions of the applicant. Staff found the challenges on the site to this specific circumstance was not caused by the actions of the applicant. The current property owner and applicant purchased the property in 2015 with the single-family home already constructed. The literal interpretation of the code would deprive the applicant of rights. Staff found that the literal interpretation of the provisions of the city code would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties within the same zone district due to the topography and how the city code is applied to the subject property regarding the front yard. Lastly, number 4 here on the slide, that granting this variance request will not confer on the applicant any special privileges that is denied by the board to other lands or structures in the same zone district. If granted, the applicant would not receive any special privileges denied to other lands or structures within the same zone district. As I previously noted, the subject property is zoned suburban residential, and a detached garage is listed as a permitted use, subject to conditions set forth in city codes, including the front and side setback requirements, which this proposal does meet, other than the front yard requirements. Within the city park woodland code, it is not unusual to have an accessory detached garage within the SR zone district. Section 18.60.050 states that non-conforming structures in the same zone district and no permitted or non-conforming structures in other zone districts shall be considered grounds for issuing a variance, and under no circumstances shall the board grant a variance to allow a use not permitted under the terms of this title in the district involved, or any use expressively or implication prohibited by the terms of this title and in the said zone district. The BOA shall consider this application and grant or deny it according to the provisions of municipal code, section 1860.040, that the representations of the application are valid, that the reasons set forth in the application justify the granting of the variance that will make it possible the reasonable use of land and structure, and that granting the variance will be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the comprehensive master plan and Title 18 zoning, and will not be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. A full analysis of this section was provided within your staff report. The application was referred to the entities listed here on the screen. Staff only received one comment during the referral period, and that was from the chief of Northeast Teller County Fire Protection District, and he does approve of the location of the proposed garage. Staff's recommendation, go ahead.
With the chief, is that, did he go, I guess he went out there and walked the site, and there won't, if they do have to go out there for some emergency reason, they won't have any issues with their vehicles coming up their lane or?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. We can ask Mr. Nash if he did go out to the site. We typically send the full packet as you guys received to our external referral agencies like PD and FD. And Chief Lambert just shot me an email saying that from the site plan, the turn radiuses that his truck needs, the applicant's driveway is large enough up top where a fire truck could drive up, turn around and drive back. Okay. So. Yep. Staff recommends to the Board of Adjustment granting a variance to locate a 24/42 accessory building in a front yard from Municipal Code Section 18.06.020 on Lot 3 of Aspen Acres with an address of 115 Troll Road, Woodland Park, Colorado, within the suburban residential zone district, subject to the following condition. The proposed structure will adhere to the city of Woodland Park architectural design guidelines outlined within section 18.33.180H. I apologize, board, Woodland Park, not Wood Park. So I'll just step out in front of that bullet right there.
Demerits have been noted.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm glad I fixed that on your staff report prior to sending it out. I hope so.
Could have been a disaster.
Thanks.
It's, per usual, I appreciate the comprehensive look at that.
Yeah.
Typically, sometimes we'll ask questions of both the applicant and the staff, after the applicant has done their presentation, but sometimes that, we're all getting old, but that gets a little bit stale periodically. So does anybody have questions now that we need to ask for CJ?
I had my question.
No,
Well, a question I had was, we can't tell it from the drawings that you have. But what is the topography, if we go up and look at the picture of the plot plan here?
Mhm. So unfortunately, within the site plan,
Yeah, what's the topography here to the west? And in front of the residence, but still behind the front line?
so this area here, Lou?
No, back up, go further north. Yeah, the area,
So,
yeah.
and the
That I'm
applicant,
looking at is this area all over here.
sure, and since we looked at that, we can look at this picture here on the right-hand side. So this is the existing single-family house here. And this is the proposed garage site, so to the north would be in this area here. And I think Mr. Nash could probably give you better data as far as how many feet he thinks above that is. But as you can see here, I mean, it's a pretty steep topography here along the northeast, and then on the north side, it's just the same. It's very steep topography running towards Troll Road.
Yeah, what I was looking at was in here.
And on the left, Lou, as well, that northern side. This kind of shows here, and it's hard to see on a picture, I get that. But there's a ridge that runs along here where my mouse is. So that there's a ridge right kind of where Mr. Nash's property line is.
Mhm.
And it runs back towards Troll Road and back towards the single family house here.
So that's basically, if I go back to sort of the site plan. It's sloped, if you will, all in the
Correct,
unmarked part, kind of coming from maybe the north part, sort of
correct.
down towards the southwest-ish.
Correct. So the whole property slopes, from where my cursor is down towards Troll Road. And there's kind of an existing small bench, obviously a lot of that was due to the grading, I'm sure, when they put in the home.
Yeah.
And there's a nice small bench where the home is, and then projecting east towards where the proposed garage site is.
Yeah. Well, and from a practical standpoint, the other side of the house doesn't have any kind of a driveway going to it.
Well,
That would
they
be a real
recognize
pain.
that the application. First off, the application, while, we're looking at it for an auxiliary building. The application was for a workshop, not a garage, so it doesn't need that. You could also rework where the driveway is. That's expensive, but expense and dollars does not enter into our decision. It's gotta meet
Well,
these
I-
guidelines.
Yeah, I didn't think that it did, Lou, but my point is, it's like, the building as proposed, I mean. Okay, if you're gonna put a workshop in there, I don't see that anywhere in this thing, but. That's fine, it looks like a garage, quite frankly, it would look a whole lot nicer than the temporary things that are there right now.
Well, yeah.
So,
No, no,
So from
I
a-
agree
from a
with you, I agree
property
with you, but I'm
standpoint.
looking at what we've got to address. And it would strike me, again, I don't see the information here doesn't give me enough clue as to the slope over here in this sector
Right, and
that would be closer to the house, but still behind the front line.
but even on that line, you can see it's going down.
I see it's going down.
Yeah.
But it looks like it's going down
No,
over
I'm
here where
talking-
this is
I'm
too.
talking about over here.
Yeah, I know you're talking about over here. I'm
And over
talking-
here, if you look at these guys, it's flat to the house.
If I look at what he's showing, I can still see their slope in particularly the back half of it.
But
Yeah,
I'm
and
so-
that's been, and the reason I see this is sloped, I'm guessing. Is that it's been graded, so it could be graded on the other side as well, which is natural.
So at the risk of sort of slowing down discussion, let's is the board okay if we gotta go off to the applicant's presentation?
Please.
Great. So Mr. Nash. Yes, please.
So I don't have a lot that I think I need to add. That was a very comprehensive presentation. I would like to address the question that the gentleman asked. The general slope of the property on both sides of the house. So one side being where the proposed site location is, the other side being the one that you were specifically asking about, sir. the slope is the same on both sides of the house. So it's just as severe, if not more severe, on that other side of the house. And I would add that, you know, it's important to me that we try to build the structure in keeping with the surrounding aesthetics. We're not interested in building, you know, a workshop or something like that that can be, you know, visibly seen from the road and really obtrusive. We picked the location for the reasons that you mentioned, ma'am, which is, you know, it's easily accessible from the driveway. But mostly because if you look at the street view that was presented earlier from Google Maps, that kind of shows you what the approach to the home looks like currently with the foliage.
It's hidden behind the trees.
Oh, I'll pause for a second. Yeah, this one,
That's the road.
it allows for, you know, the structure that we're proposing to be masked by the existing vegetation. So that's part of the factor that went into the proposed location as well. But I'm happy to answer any other questions you have. I feel like there's, you know, I don't want to take up unnecessarily any more of your time than need be, but I feel like this was a pretty thorough presentation. And I didn't feel like I needed to, you know, add a lot to it.
I do,
Go ahead.
Chris. Mr. Nash, on this, based on what I'm looking through the proposal and the request for the variance, it looks like where you're putting the garage, you know, half of it is, looks like there's been a graded area in that, on your property. And then I noticed that you do have your temporary shelters and they're solar powered. Are those shelters, once this, you know,
It's instead.
is approved and we go forward, are those going to be removed then?
Yes, sir.
So that you have better access to your,
That's
to the
where
new-
the building B is where those are.
Yes, sir. They will be removed.
That's from the document. That's where they will.
Is there any other questions for the app?
Again, looking at our checklist. What are if this were not approved, what would property rights are we depriving, would we be depriving you of that other people in the neighborhood or under that same zone
Yes, sir.
already have?
So one of the concerns that we have, I don't know if it's necessarily that you would be depriving me necessarily, but if I have to stay within the current existing code, I'm gonna have to build like what would look like a bunker type structure inside the hillside, which is not gonna be really in great keeping with the aesthetics of the neighborhood. So we're trying to avoid that. The excavation that would be required is gonna be quite disruptive to, you know, water flow, water egress and game trails that are existing in the area. So we're trying not to overly disrupt that. And there's also a really, you know, valuable view corridor there for neighboring properties that we're also not trying to avoid disrupting as well.
And I really appreciate that, and I think that what you're proposing in the site location is good. What I'm wrestling with is the fact that I have trouble saying that it meets the requirements that we have in the checklist, and I would look for a way that we have the authority to approve what he's proposing, because I think what you're proposing is the best answer. But I can't stand behind that you're being deprived of rights that other people have.
Well, I don't really have an ability to build a structure with the existing topology being as severe as it is. So that's where, you know, could I build a bunker in the hillside? Is it possible to do that? I guess it is. Putting cost completely aside, this is about, you know, what would be reasonable, right? And so,
And I agree with you. I have trouble. And this is where I guess I could ask maybe for some help from you guys and help from legal. Is if we don't fully meet
Well, so
the
if I can,
checklist, things, can we still approve? stuff
Well,
like
if
that?
I can offer.
Cause
one
I think
way-
this is the right answer.
Yeah, if I can offer, if we, I like what you grabbed there with the literal interpretation would deprive the property owner of rights. I think if we think about variances in general, right? I mean, there's always forgive me, my brain just sort of works to the extreme, right? There's always if I had $6 billion, I could move all of the earth, right? I could move all of the things on the property, right? But if I sort of start to take that in and say, look, the code was built not necessarily for flat land, right?
Right,
Flat 2.5
right,
acres,
right.
but for, call it reasonable topology. Then I think with reasonable topology, a reasonable thing to do would be to build an accessory building, in that sort of backyard. I think in this case, we have what I would consider probably beyond the reasonable topology. I think we have more significant slopes. I think it is Mr. Nash, right? I'm so
Yes.
sorry. Yeah, okay, so I think it's just sometimes we have different, like the architects, and I didn't want to keep misnaming you. I think Mr. Nash presented that, we didn't necessarily see that in the presentation, but you've got some drainage concerns as you got, large topographies like that or significant topographies like that. And so I think the ability to build a structure without sort of moving the entire slope, if you will, without damaging sort of the natural harmony of the land. I think we could consider that a sort of a property right, if you will. I think about my property, we have about 2 acres, and it's not as severely sloped. And we could easily accommodate that and sort of meet the same objectives that Mr. Nash is trying to meet. Because of the way that the property line sort of goes, and we've got more of a flatter backyard and so on and so forth. So I would look at it as not so much he couldn't build an accessory building, but he couldn't build one like other property owners, keeping in the natural harmony and kind of keeping the view quarters and the appropriate drainage and so on and so forth. So I would look at sort of that way as opposed to could it not be built?
I still have trouble with the checklist.
Yeah.
That's why I ask, help me find a way to do that. If from our standpoint, we have to make the following findings: that the representation and the application are valid,
Well,
and the variance is justified and makes the reasonable use of the land. Certainly, this does that.
Yeah.
And it is more in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the comp plan. The sticking point I have, and it's a nit, but that's where I'm looking for some help, maybe from what your experience has been with other places
So I'm
on
sorry,
this.
can you all hear me? Okay.
We can.
Which factor is it again that you were,
Well, the one that
the special privileges?
the special privileges and I granted the topography is there, but other people have been able to build, and there's places here where the topography, people have been able to build accessory buildings, garages, workshops, what have you, in similarly sloped places. In fact, looking at this, and again, I'm being literal, the area that is being proposed for this is not natural. It was graded.
Right.
To do this. So it's not that there's undisturbed land around here and all of it has been undisturbed. It's been adjusted by the previous owner, by the builder, to present you with a place to put this that was caused by human intervention. There's other places around here where it could be
So.
corrected and I'd like to approve this. Help me figure out how to get around this one part.
Yeah, so I think right now we're getting a little bit further into deliberation. We can have CJ follow up and explain a little bit more why staff found that was the report and everything submitted, the application met all the factors. And I believe that may help you come around to that
Okay, sure.
or understand if that makes sense that way.
Could I just ask one more question for Mr. Nash, though, before we go back and more details on the presentation? With Mr. Ramon, my counterpart, you know, we do show that it looks like there has been some grading on one part of the house, and it looks like based on, that was done probably prior to you purchasing the property. Was that done because of the topography and the way the house was built, the home was built, and the way the slope was, that was to help, you know, runoff not come into the foundation and things like that? Do you know that information?
So the excavation that was done prior to me purchasing a property, I can't really speak to,
Okay.
you know, the logic there, but it follows common sense that that would have been why they did it.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions directly for the applicant?
No, I think it looks
Seeing none?
good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
So with that said, we're gonna move to the public comment portion of the meeting. So when I open up for public comment, is there anyone in the room that would like to get up and? Yes, sir. And I think, forgive me for, you guys can remind me, I think it's let us know your name. Is that it?
Yeah, and address if you wish to do so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Please.
Frank Gray and I live at 159 Troll Road. And we share the property line that is closest to this building
Okay,
on the north and east. And I'm here to tell you guys, we think it's a great idea. Yeah, it's a fine place for it. It doesn't interfere with us. I do believe we are the only people that are gonna be able to see it in the neighborhood. And speaking to what Mr. Ramon's concerns are, everybody has a right to come in front of you people for an exception, and I think that that's in a way answers your question, because not everything is the same and things don't always work out the way the rules are. But also that slope that we share is, I'm not sure there's a steeper slope in Aspen Acres. And where he has this building planned is really the logical spot for it. And that's it.
thank you very much. Is there
Okay.
any questions for Mr. Gray?
No,
No.
Thank you. Do we have other public comment from the room?
anyone on water?
Is there anyone on the line?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, so there are folks on the line, but no hands raised. So just a reminder for anyone on the line, if you do want to comment,
We do actually have one hand raised if
We
you
do?
wanna.
fantastic.
It just went
Oh.
down.
Just kidding.
Do you see that, Dave?
Up and down.
So I'll
We-
give it
we
sort of a
can-
going once, going twice, but if there is anyone on the line, please raise the hand, use the raise the hand feature. And we'll be happy to hear what you got to say.
Yep, so it looks like we have Bill Ames. If you wanna please unmute him, Dave, and
Mr. Ames?
Mr. Ames, you're please unmute and you're ready to speak.
We're not.
Mr. Ames, if you are speaking, we can't hear you.
He is unmuted, but we cannot hear him.
That's helpful.
Is there any, CJ, is there any other hands raised? Okay. Is there a chat feature, CJ?
There is, yes.
So we'll just give one more chance for Mr. Ames if since we can't hear you, if you just type in the chat, if you're having some technical difficulty, happy to give you a second.
I apologize. Dave, since you're the host, do you think you could send him a quick chat? I don't have that feature since I'm not the host of the Zoom meeting.
Okay. Well, I think we've probably given enough time at this point. So I'd like to move on. Typically, we'd offer, if there was a significant public comment or public comment that sort of disagreed, we'd offer a chance for the applicant to have rebuttal. Mr. Gray, I believe it was, essentially agreed with you. So my guess is, Mr. Nash, there's no interest in needing a rebuttal at this point. Okay, great. So at this point, we are going to begin our deliberations. For those watching here in person or up on the Zoom call, the deliberations are for the staff, for the board. And so we'd ask that folks remain quiet and remain respectful as we talk about that. The idea, and I'll ask the board members to make sure that we're deliberating publicly and sort of thinking out loud as we go forward and talking through the specific case. If we do have questions for Mr. Nash or for CJ, we can go off and ask those. With that suggested, we can begin deliberations and see what we come up with.
Okay, I think,
I would like
Oops.
CJ to walk me through a little bit more the four items that 1860-20 requires there. Particularly with respect to the hardships and what we're depriving Mr. Nash of.
Sure. So within the staff report, which is available online, but for the record, staff's stated that the literal interpretation of the provisions of city code would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zone district due to the topography and how the city code is applied to the subject property regarding the front yard. So with that, let me share my screen real quick. And I just wanted to show just a few other pictures that were in the staff report that did not make the cut for the PowerPoint, but I think they're important to point out. For reference, this is looking at the proposed drain or the proposed garage site. And even though it was graded, I personally, as staff, we still believe that, the interpretations still meet the standards. For what the applicant has graded, they meet all city codes and did come to staff first to see if he could grade. And it's not against our regulations to grade that size of a pad. So he was totally, he was in the right to do that. For reference, Mr. Gray's house is just back this direction as well. And this shows the topography very well, because this is kind of at eye level with that topography. And but fairly steep slope. And then as far as, and I read that specific provision within the staff report, Lou, just to specifically point out that staff did call out how the front yard was being assessed as well. And I think that's an important note to make. Because typically speaking, if you have a 2.5 acre site, yes, that is, a larger property, typically a house would not be this far back into the property. How, just unfortunately to the applicant, how the front yard is being assessed, it cuts off, 90% of the quote unquote
yeah.
buildable area. So I think that's definitely something to think about. How the city code limits this property in building detached structures. So that's, how city staff came to that, those findings. So yeah, we do believe that rights, would be taken away, but, that's our recommendation. And that's why you guys are sitting over there and I'm sitting over here. So,
Well, and that's where, if I didn't have that checklist in front of me, looking at what's being proposed, looking at the way the code is written, that we have to address what's a front yard. Yeah, I see absolutely no reason why not to approve this variance. I mean, this request, this is the place that this building should be located. What I wrestle with is the constraints here. Is it okay from a legal standpoint?
So
to approve it where it's really soft in my mind on some of these. And again, this is where if we had more than just a quorum and needed a unanimous decision, I wouldn't feel nearly as bad about being a nitpicker.
Well,
Ally?
my hangup is at some level, Lou, I think you are using it in an extremely literal interpretation.
Mhm.
And it just, that's the whole purpose of being able to have a variance, and you've got so much feet in front of the house that nobody can see it, and the neighbor can't even see it. It's not like you're gonna disturb the character of this
And I
SR
agree, and I agree
area.
with you.
So
I agree.
I don't see that I don't think it would be giving him any special privileges, which is, we can't, I don't see that it is,
Mhm.
that's me.
And with the question I asked Mr. Nash earlier, some of this was done, this grading, this adjusting, the topography was done prior to their purchase of the land. So he has no control of what the previous owner did.
Except he has control over his option to buy it,
Well, that's kind of,
given what's been done.
well,
And-
that's
and
kind
you
of a
could
little
do
bit,
something
I'm
too.
sorry, that's just a little too, that's, for me,
Literal
that's.
For you?
That's way too literal for me, and I'm a literal person, but, cause I mean, he bought this property in 2015, it's a long time ago now. So I don't think that, and whether he was thinking about building a garage then or not. I don't know if he was, obviously they did something so they could have those other temporary things in there, I don't know if those were there when you bought the place. But it's not unreasonable to want to replace those temporary structures with a real live building.
Well, let me ask a question of CJ again, looking at those temporary structures. What kind of approval is required to put those there in the front yard? Was that achieved? My reading the code doesn't allow things like that. Temporary structures are for purposes of entertainment, for sales, for this, that, and the other, and have to be approved by council.
My assessment, what, as
And
far
that's
as those,
separate than this, but
Yeah,
but
I
I'm
mean,
not sure how.
as far as
got
those temporary structures go, they don't need a permit, because they're not. They don't meet our definition of structure. They're temporary in nature and meant to be put up and
there. Yeah,
taken
but
down.
we've got a section in the code that talks about temporary structures.
So I think we're getting a little bit further outside the factors here.
Yeah,
What's at issue?
that's separate.
And I also wanted to just make one note, obviously you'll deliberate, I can't tell you what to do. But from our point of view in the city attorney's office, we saw no problem with the justification or what was written in staff.
So you don't see anything where we'd be potentially getting in hot water?
Our office didn't see any problems with the staff report as it's written in the justifications.
So, kind of going back to that, Lou, I think, to me, there are multiple reasons. I think I think we're really talking about that third bullet, right? The literal interpretation of 18 would deprive the applicant property owner of rights. To me, it's kind of a combined factor, right? Hey, the house is set back. And so I think if I was, trying to put myself in sort of city council shoes and the plan and how they're interpreting the code and so on and so forth. Again, the literal interpretation of the code of the front yard doesn't necessarily meet what at least I would normally think about as a front yard, right? In terms of, you've got a house that's facing the street, and you go up to the parallel thing, and then like all the definitions make all the sense in the world for call it a piece of property that's kind of in a square, flattish lot, kind of in the horseshoe bed, right? Like we have properties like that, right? And so I think the combination of, hey, in this case, the definition of front yard, yeah, it's probably not the best, right? It's probably not how I would
Right,
define
right.
for this thing. And I think, again, the literal interpretation probably doesn't make as much sense. And I think two, when you combine that with the topography,
Mhm.
right? I think you get two sort of two factors to me that say, hey, look, this interpretation just doesn't make sense. in this
And the
case.
one that I guess I want to make sure of is looking at the last bullet, given the discussion that we
Yep.
had. Where this makes nothing but good sense. Would we be granting or putting ourselves in position of support? If we approve this, would someone come up and say, well, wait a minute, you're granting him a special privilege that you normally don't give other people because this property's already been graded because of various other things? Are we putting ourselves at risk in future situations?
Well,
And Betsy can help on that.
I think to answer your question.
Yeah.
Some of this, Lou, and I respect everything that you're saying, was done prior to Mr. Nash purchasing the property in 2015. Things have changed. He feels that he has to have, this new
A real
detached
garage.
garage. He's also, I look at it this way, a lot of people wouldn't even be thinking about trying to split the difference and have just a small reason to come for a variance. He's trying to do the best that he can with what he has. And would we be putting ourselves in a situation where someone would come down the road and go, hey, back when you did this? Well, each variance, as we know, has to stand on its own merits. And I think this variance is standing on its own merits. I feel that the applicant, is doing the best that he can, not to have it just quote unquote under the, I agree with Nick. This is a little bit different than a normal front yard.
Yeah.
And he's doing his best to work around what was done prior to him purchasing the property and the purchasing the people. Yeah, wait on. But the property and working within the parameters to make his variance request as minimal as possible. That's what I see. And I don't see where we're going to be putting ourselves as a board of the Board of Adjustments, putting ourselves in any type of legal situation down the road. Because each variance has to stand on its own based on the information and the merits that are brought before us. So I don't see us putting ourselves in jeopardy here. That's what I see and feel.
Jim, if I could tack on to that, I really liked how you sort of phrased that, and what stuck in my head is sort of let's say somebody comes in and says, well, why'd you guys, WTF, right? Like, I want my thing approved. And I think you can kind of go back to the factors that we talked about for bullet 3, right? Hey, this is a special circumstance. I think the other one that actually really stuck in fact, I wrote this down, and I forgot about it. Mr. Gray talked about it. He said, that slope, right? In theory, again, just a little bit over, halfway, but right, it's just a little bit in that front yard. That slope where we could say, well, could you push it back a little bit more? Steepest slope in Aspen Acres. So if we talk about the plan being kind of in harmony with the overall, I think it's the structure of the neighborhood, or the in harmony with the neighborhood intent, will not be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. We can say, hey, look, steepest one in Aspen Acres, right? Again, sort of exceptional pieces versus, hey, this is the overall topography. Every place is gonna. So for me, I'll say I think that gives me enough where I feel like I've got something to stand on. If somebody came back and said, hey, you really just giving Mr. Nash a break here, I could say, no. I think there's a lot of things that lend itself to this is a special circumstance.
Yeah, and the normal, not normal, the usual orientation on a house,
Yes,
it's
yes,
parallel to the
square
road.
road.
It's not. So, which is how you get
Right,
this weird front yard that's.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not normal. So, it's sort of like calling for an exception. Seriously, I'm not being sarcastic.
And I agree with you in that total respect. That's why I'm looking for a way that we can say yes without putting us at future risk for something else. Clearly, the way the code is written, given the topography, given this the plat, the the plot of the house where it is located and the way it's located on the property, it doesn't make sense not to be able to put an outbuilding, a garage or a workshop, whatever you want to call it,
And
there
it-
at that point.
And if you look at the lots and stuff in here, Lou, I mean, with all the trees and everything else is here, these people don't see it. The
Oh,
guy
right,
the
right,
guy
right,
that
right.
sees it already said,
I
I'll
don't
barely
care."
see it and I don't care. So I don't see where we're gonna do something crazy.
Yeah, I think that definitely hits the interest of the neighborhood or detrimental to public welfare, right? I think we've got that one pretty nailed down. So I guess I'd ask, Lou, are you feeling sort of better about that? if
Yes,
you will?
I do feel better.
Okay,
I feel better from what you guys have said, what legal has helped me with.
Yes, and I believe the way Jim, or excuse me, Mr. Ramsey spoke about it. kind of
Great.
Bolstered your reasoning. Again, it's up to you at the end. I have no opinion, but
so I'll ask, is there any other items for discussion? Do we feel comfortable making a motion?
I feel comfortable making the motion. at this
Anybody want to
point.
make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the variance VAR 2023-10 for the Nash front yard variance to locate a 24 by 42-foot accessory building in the front yard per municipal code 18.06.020 on lot 3, Aspen Acres, with an address of 115 Trull Road, Woodland Park, Colorado.
Is there a second for the motion?
I'll second it.
excuse me, I'd like to make a point.
Oh.
Did you all mean to include the condition by staff report? In the motion? If so, you can amend it. Yeah.
Well, then
Thank
I'll
you.
amend the motion to include the conditions and recommendations by the staff report.
Great.
I got a question on that.
Yes, please.
And then this is just. Do we need to include that in our findings or? Since it's whatever has to be done, has to be approved by the planning department and they enforce the rules, isn't that just a given?
It is. It is a given anytime, if you guys, wanted to detach structure, we would hold you to the same codes, correct? So this is kind of a CYA on staff's part, just say, hey,
Okay.
just so you guys know.
And the only reason I was asking was do we need to say that every time?
Right, and that's one of our go-to.
Okay.
And we did have a second, correct? Perfect. Okay, we have a first and a second, Valerie Lundy
Yes,
to
Approved.
approve. Louis Ramon,
Yes.
Jim Rumsey,
Yes.
Nick Abercrombie.
Yes. Great. So the variance is approved, with the conditions set forth in the staff report. And I believe that will be published and sent out to the applicant. Am I right about that?
The findings?
The findings.
Correct.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay, and I
Yeah.
think it's within 10 days.
Yes.
Thanks, sorry.
Yeah, we'll have it. Yeah,
Your memory's better than
issued index.
Fantastic. So we did that. With that said, we've moved through our new business part of the agenda. Are there any staff reports?
I personally don't have any. I know our wonderful planning director is online. If she wants to chime in and say hello.
Any staff reports?
Good
Yeah.
evening. No, I did not have anything else for you all this evening, so just thank you for your time and attention. And I know Lou continues to look for alternate members. I'm not sure how much progress you've been making. And then I hope to potentially have Mr. O'Neill reappointed and back in your ranks here soon.
Great.
That's it.
Before we close the meeting, anything else from the board? All right.
No.
No, paper time here, it's about 7:30. This meeting's adjourned.